hope you had an amazing holiday weekend. I hope you had a holiday weekend. We're here today to talk about Fascism is a Left-Wing Ideology Part 2. This will be many more parts than I originally imagined, because in the first one, I went through 3 categories and listed the things that each political ideology represented for that particular thing. And that was pretty good, but I think I'm going to take them one at a time because there needs to be a little bit more depth to it. So today we're going to talk about economic ideology. If you remember, our 5 categories are communism, fascism, progressivism, liberal, partial, interventionist, and constitutional conservative. So in the category of economic ideology under communism, international socialism, state ownership of all property and economic resources. Fascism is national socialism, economic system where private property exists but is subservient to state goals. Progressivism is viewed as mixed economy. State plays a significant role in regulating markets and redistributive policies. Liberal, partial, interventionist, and we're still moving right, market-based economy with moderate government intervention to address inequalities. And finally, the farthest right in this particular example, constitutional conservative or classical liberal, free market capitalism with minimal government intervention. As a reminder, as we move right, there is less government involvement. As we move left, there is more. So when you talk about fascism and you talk about economics, and these are a couple of quotes I pulled from various places around the internet, we are going to look at the Italian corporatist system. Now, Italian Marxism was a centralized autocratic government that put the nation above the individual. So as you go left, the nation and the government become more important than, as you go right, the individual. A planned industrial harmony. The state does not necessarily own, but instead directs or plans the economy towards certain fixed objectives to ensure order in the economic field. It's the fascist conception of life, which stresses the importance of the state and accepts the individual only insofar as his interests coincide with the state. Does this not sound exactly like the modern Democrat Party? I know they call themselves progressives. I know they've embraced Democrat socialism, which, as we know from Marxists and communists, Democrat socialism or democratic socialism is just a necessary step to get to Marxism. And you march right through fascism to get it. These are all left-wing projects. Private property and business ownership are permitted, but are in reality controlled by the government. Quote, in Mussolini's Italy, businesses were grouped by the government into legally recognized syndicates, such as the National Fascist Confederation of Commerce, the National Fascist Confederation of Credit and Insurance, and so on. And all of these fascist confederations were coordinated by a network of government planning agencies called corporations, one for each industry. One large national council of corporations served as a national overseer of the individual corporations and had the power to issue regulations of a compulsory character. The Italian corporative state, according to The Economist, editorialized on July 27, 1935, only amounts to the establishment of a new and costly bureaucracy from which those industrialists who can spend the necessary amount can obtain almost anything they want and put into practice the worst kind of monopolistic practices at the expense of the little fellow who is squeezed out in the process. Oligarchs. It's a left-wing thing. Fascism is corporate welfare on its grandest scale, far left and distant from the informative free market, but one small step to the right of socialism. As the Nazis demanded of the German economy, the activities of the individual must not clash with the interests of the whole, but must be for the general good, meaning the state. And finally, political or regulatory force or the threat of it were the guardrails. You existed to serve the state, which inevitably meant those in power who used the presumption of a benefit to the broader body politic to justify their autocratic or totalitarian rule. Fascism is a left-wing project. It's never been right, unless you mean just to the right of communism. Hi, Cosmo. Thanks. That's it for Monday. We'll talk to you tomorrow.